Chapter 34 Martin Luther's New Ideas. Martin Luther's List. When Spain and Portugal started to send their ships to West Africa and the Americas, a new time in history began. You will often hear this time called the Age of Discovery or the Age of Exploration. For the first time, countries such as Spain, Portugal, France, and England were not just trying to grow bigger by conquering the land next to their borders. Instead, they grew by planting colonies, new settlements in lands far away. While these European countries were expanding their power into other parts of the world, the Catholic Church was trying to keep its power in Europe. For most of the Middle Ages, the Catholic Church, the Christian Church led by the Pope in Rome, was as powerful as any country. The Catholic Church had its own laws and its own citizens. The Pope could even tell kings what to do, and often they obeyed him. But as the age of exploration began, a monk named Martin Luther began to criticize the Catholic Church. Martin Luther grew up in the part of Europe that we now call Germany. His parents wanted him to be a lawyer, but Martin Luther decided to join a monastery instead. As a monk, he had to beg for food and money. He spent long hours praying and studying the Bible. Martin Luther chose this difficult, demanding life because he was afraid that God would punish him for his sins unless he worked day and night to make God happy. He wrote that he was walled around with the terror and agony of God's anger. Martin Luther did everything that the church told him he should do. He went on pilgrimage to Rome. He prayed in front of the relics of saints. He crawled on his hands and knees, reciting the Lord's Prayer to show how sorry he was for his sins. But he was still afraid that God would be displeased with him. After he had been a monk for 5 years, Martin was sent to teach at a university in the German city of Wittenberg. He taught his students about the book of Romans in the New Testament. He spent hours studying this book, and as he studied, he began to change his mind about what God wanted from him. He thought to himself, "The book of Romans doesn't tell me that I have to earn God's love by working hard to do good. No. It says that God gives me the power to believe in him and the power to be good because he already loves me." This changed Martin's way of thinking about God. Later he said, "It seemed to me as if I had been born again and as if I had entered paradise through newly opened doors." Think about it this way. Imagine that you have 2 aunts. Both of them say that they love you, but the first aunt lives in a very clean house with a white rug on the floor. When you come to visit her, she opens the door and looks at you very carefully to see if your hands and shoes and face are clean before she lets you in. She invites you to have hot chocolate and cookies with her, but you have to sit on a white velvet couch while you eat. During your snack, she keeps checking to see whether you are sitting straight and chewing your mouth closed. When you drip a little bit of hot chocolate on the sofa, she gets rubber gloves, a big bucket of hot soapy water, and a sponge. She makes you scrub at the stain, but it won't come off. So she shouts, "Leave this house at once, and don't come back until you learn how to eat neatly." Now imagine that you go to see the second aunt. She throws her door open and says, "I'm so glad to see you. Come in." And she hugs you, even though you've been playing in the dirt. You get a little bit of mud on her apron, but she dusts it off and says, "Why don't you wash your hands before you have a snack?" The bathroom has good-smelling hand soap and big blue towels in it. After you wash your hands, she takes you into the kitchen and sits you down at a big wooden table for your cookies and hot chocolate. When you spill a little, she gives you a napkin and says, "That's not the worst thing that's been spilt on this table." When your snack is done, she says, "Let's go upstairs and do some finger painting in the playroom, and then you can have a bubble bath to wash off." Which aunt would you rather go see? The first aunt is a little bit like the way Martin Luther used to think of God. The second aunt is more like the way he learned to think about God after reading Romans. When Martin Luther looked around, he saw that many other people also seemed to have the wrong ideas about God. and he thought that the Church's teachings made these wrong ideas stronger. The Catholic Church had begun to teach that God would only forgive sins if the sinners did penance, special deeds like giving money to the poor or confessing their sins in public to show how sorry they were. But the Church also taught that sinners could get out of doing penance by paying a certain amount of money to the Church. This practice was called selling indulgences. Martin Luther believed that indulgences were wrong. He preached that God would forgive any sinner who believed in Jesus Christ, not just to those who did penance or bought indulgences. Christ has nowhere commanded indulgences to be preached, he wrote, only the gospel. So he made a list of 95 reasons why indulgences were wrong. On October 31st, 1517, Luther nailed a copy of this list, called the 95 Theses, to the church door in Wittenberg. This was his way of inviting other churchmen to argue with him about his ideas. But Luther found that people all over Germany were interested in his list. Soon, hundreds of people were discussing Martin Luther's 95 Theses. For the first time, people were beginning to say out loud that the Catholic Church might not always be right about God.